Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Today we're definitely going to talk about love. We're probably going to talk about more than love notes and laughter. For sure, we're going to do that because my friend Henry and his wife put together a book called that exact title, and I can't wait to talk about it. How are you doing today, Henry?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, and we are going to be talking about a lot of things, love involved. Absolutely.
Yeah, love life and family. Again, I remember if I remember correctly, you had your son is serves, so thank him for his service. We
Yeah,
always want to make sure we pay respects to service members and their families.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I just spoke to him three night on Father's Day night. He finally got a hold of me at like 11:30 at night because he's in Korea right now. So
Oh, okay. All right.
yeah, yeah.
Korea's I actually just spoke to somebody from Korea in the military, and they're we just had a guest that was doing that. So yeah, it's just
Okay.
well, it's good. Well, but thank you for his service and what he is what he's doing.
Thank you, thank you. I'll let him know.
Okay. Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself? So, I know you wrote the book, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and then we can go from there on.
Okay. So my name is Henry Mims. I live here in Central Florida. I've been a Floridian my whole life. I've only been outside of Florida altogether less than 6 months in my whole life, and I'm 47 years old.
Wow.
Every time I go somewhere, I always want to come back. But I was born shortly after I was born, I contracted spinal meningitis for the bacterial, not the other one. And then they found out and so I had meningitis, and then about 3 years old, they found out I was deaf. They thought I had behavioral problems because of my aggression towards my mom, even though I seemed to be peaceful with my dad. And the issue was my mom had a high pitched voice I couldn't hear.
Oh,
So aggression and all that stuff. So they found out I was deaf. They put me in special needs. And then from there, mainstreamed me out into, I guess, what you would call normal classes.
yeah.
Um, Growing up, though, my parents were kind of a backtrack a little bit. My mom she fled Cuba when Castro took over.
Wow.
So I grew up in a household where there's no excuses. I came to this country not knowing English and still had to go to school and this and that and the whole immigrant son, you know what I mean? And my dad was a Southerner. They fell in love. And then that just kind of got everything going. But fast forward a little bit. So yeah, and then as time went on, when I was about 14 years old, I lost my dad to cancer. So that was kind of a little bit of a gut punch. And then, but my mom still held it together. And through life, I ended up becoming a very, very angry person. I got in trouble with the law quite a bit. The last time I was looking at about 40 years. By the
Wow.
grace of God, I got to get out of jail free. I don't know how I got it, but I did. Um, and then moving on from there, just kind of fumbling through life a little bit. I had uh, I had a marriage that was the one before this one, and then I had two boys. I had a daughter before that. And then I met my now current wife, the one that I wrote the co-authored the book with. And then we blended families with two other boys, and then we kind of adopted the one that we were just talking about, Z, over in Korea, through soccer and stuff like that. We can also coach and help with soccer teams as well. So that's kind of a nutshell how all this came about to this book.
That's a
Uh,
that's an incredible story. I mean, okay, I just want to make sure we're not going to get miss anything. Should when your mom came from Cuba, were you with her?
no,
No,
she came
you
from
weren't.
Cuba back
You
in,
came here earlier. Now,
yeah,
but still
she
there,
was it.
yeah,
Yeah,
but still there's so much there that you're leaving, the way that you grew up. I mean, I know I was lucky enough to go to Cuba, but I also spent a lot of my life in Florida, and the Cuban influence there is
heavy.
tremendous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
So
grew up.
she came when she was a teenager.
Oh, okay.
And then they landed in Miami, well, around Miami, and then they ended up in Illinois.
Oh, wow.
So then as time went on, I lived in Miami for a few years. I lived in my hometown is Pensacola. That's where I was born. Um, and then I lived in Miami a few years. I lived in my Pensacola probably 15, 16 years. Miami about 5, 10 years roughly. Yeah, about no, more than that actually. 10, 15 years, back and forth, including Orlando, and then now in Palm Bay, Melbourne area. So, yeah,
Yeah, no, but that's incredible. So I think there was a lot of Cuban immigrants who had come from through Florida and went to actually Illinois. I have a friend,
yeah,
Omar Periu, who actually also, his family ended up, they came from Cuba, they emigrated to Illinois, and then it was too cold for them, and then they eventually ended up into warmer territories.
yeah. No, I like being warm. I've never been in snow, and I don't plan on being either. So,
You should
but yeah,
experience it at least once.
we'll see, we'll see.
We'll see. You're right. You won't write it off, but I also don't wouldn't tell you to go rush for it. It's
Uh,
while there's a lot of fun for it, there's definitely no need to be in it all the time.
right, right. I agree with you. I agree with you.
So how did this book come along? So you'd gotten through some troubles in life.
Hmm.
How did you find your path? How did you find your journey to get out of trouble and whatever you want to share? You don't have to share everything.
No, no, no. That's I am an open book, and probably more so than I should be sometimes. But so when I got in trouble, the whole thing about getting in trouble was I had gotten really, really upset. I became an angry person. I was really nice, and if you talk to anybody that knew me at that time, they would tell you, "Oh, he's a sweetheart. He's the nicest guy in the world," which I was. But on the inside, it was go time. Like if anybody wanted to go, I was ready to go. You know. But I also didn't think that I was going to be around that long. So then comes in this whole thing because you start hanging out with the wrong crowd sometimes and things like that.
Is that why because of the wrong crowd is why you think you aren't going to be around for a while?
I was kind of a chameleon, so I flowed between groups and
Hmm.
and just kind of just went wherever the fun was, you know.
Sure.
Um, and with that comes trouble.
Yep.
And I always made the assumption later on in life I realized it was the wrong assumption, but I always made the assumption that just because I'm not doing exactly what they're doing, or just because I'm not this group or this whatever, then I'm not what I'm doing is not as bad.
Right.
What I'm so but it's all bad.
Right. Once you
No
cross
matter
over the line, I look, I've been in that position also. Well, that's not as bad as Joe or whatever,
yeah,
but if you cross the line, you cross the line and you deserve to get slapped down.
yeah,
Yep.
and then you get comfortable.
Yep.
And then that becomes your new normal. Where before it was kind of like this either exciting or anxious thing, but then when that becomes your new normal, what's the next thing? And it just gets easier and easier to fall into that slippery slope. And that's what I did. And I felt like, well, I'm not going to be here long anyways. Things like that. But when then I ended up getting PTI, which is pretrial intervention.
Hmm.
So I didn't have a history per se before then. So they were kind of like, okay, this is the first time, whatever. We're going to try this program, PTI, see
Hmm.
if you fit. But however, if you screw this up, the next time around, it's going to be a book and a half. So I didn't
Hmm.
want the book and a half coming at me because I
Sure.
was looking at almost 40 years. Well, about 40 years. Anyways, I didn't want to do that.
Sure. No, of course not.
Um, and my mom pointed out to me, she said, if you do 40 years, and this is back in the 90s, she said, if you do 40 years, then by the time you get out, you're going to be almost in your 60s.
Mm.
I was like, well, hold on a second. That 5 years from retirement. Wait a minute. So and then to kind of backtrack a little bit. Um, but and I started to bring myself out of that. The other thing was, what really got me out of everything was I had found out that I had a daughter, and
Mm.
so when I had the daughter, and I'm looking at things that are in my house that should definitely not be in my house. I'm dealing with the people that I definitely shouldn't be dealing with, and then going, okay, I know how some of these people are. And they're not going to care who's in a house. They're not going to care who's on the other side of a door. They're not going to care what happens if she's with me, you know? And I was just kind of like, I'm done. Which was a kind of a undertaking on its own.
Hmm.
But the path from there to where we are now, came from me just genuinely trying to understand the human condition and trying to understand what am I missing? Like, what is it? Because I'm 95% deaf, so I read lips and body language. That's mainly how I communicate.
Hmm.
So now I'm trying to understand people and trying to understand a different way of life and things like that. Um, so when going along, I got married in my mid 20s. Then we had two more boys. So now I have three kids altogether. And then as time went on, her and I it just didn't work out. Partly me, partly her. We just went our separate ways. And then I ended up meeting, I call her Lover Danny. She's the Hen and Danny, more than
Yep,
love,
yep.
nuts, and laughter. She's the Danny in this. Um, so I ended up when I used to work in a restaurant, and I tell the story. So my best friend and her best friend are married.
Mm.
So they would always try to invite us, her and her husband, me and my ex-wife. They would try and invite us to go and hang out with them, New Year's, stuff like that, Christmas parade, what have you. One time in particular, I was supposed to go to the Christmas parade, but I got called into work. I left my now 21-year-old son with my best friend so that he could go with his kid because they were good friends. My son and his son were fantastic friends. She ended up babysitting him, not realizing that we were going to cross paths again 15 years later,
Mm.
or 10 years later, 10, 15 years later. So that was kind of like we were supposed to meet, or almost met, almost met, almost met. And then one night I was at a Valentine's dance after my wife and I had separated, my ex-wife and I had separated. And then my buddy called me up and said, "Hey man, I don't want to be a third wheel here. Can you please come and bail me out?" Basically.
Mm.
So I said, "Okay." And so then that's where the book starts, my feet shuffling in the sand. Said I went out that night. I wasn't going to, but I was like, you know what? I got nothing else to do, so I'll go. So I went to down. I drove about 45 minutes south and met them at a sandbar, and that's where it all started.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess your two friends who were married, that they knew something from the beginning what you guys didn't see, and
Right. Right.
you
And when
said,
we first met, we were just friends. And as a matter of fact, I like to tell the story of where was she running to. Was at the end of the night, we were leaving, going our separate ways. And we danced and we had a good time. We told jokes and stuff like that. But I wasn't in a place where I wanted to be with anybody. I just wanted to be. I had started learning how to fall in love with myself. I took myself out on dates. I just wanted to see who I was because when you get out of a marriage, where's your identity? Like, who are you? The things that you loved to do 10 years before, 15 years before don't seem so fun anymore. So what's the new fun? What's the new thing?
Mhm.
So, and I was just kind of like not in a place to even do. So when we were leaving that night, I was walking with my buddy and she was walking with her friend. And then she started running to the car. I said, is she okay? Does she need to go to the bathroom? Does she need to? No, she thought I was going to try to kiss her. And I'm like, you wish. But but we joke about it all the time now. It wasn't until probably about 4 months later, she was getting ready to go on a date, and the guy ghosted her. So she was telling her friend, who's married to my friend, about this, and she said, "You know what? Why don't you just go out and have a kid-free night, and just you and him just go out and do whatever?" So she said, "All right." And then she said, "Of course, I'm not going to call him. He has to call me because she's old school." So
Right.
I said, all right. So I texted her. We ended up going and going out to eat. She wanted to go see a movie in case the date didn't work out. She didn't tell me this beforehand. She told me this afterwards. So that way she wouldn't have to talk, right?
Sure.
But we ended up closing down the restaurant and stayed in the parking lot for another 2 hours, just chit-chatting, and it's been on ever since.
Wow. All right. Well, that's awesome. It's really great when things like that happen, uh, because it really is much more powerful than we can ever imagine. Now,
Hmm.
you did mention something before we dive into the book a little bit. You mentioned about loving yourself.
Yeah.
Could you tell about that? Because I really, I had a suicide attempt 6 years ago, almost
Okay.
7 years ago. But the real powerful part is when I was trying to rebuild myself or get my head straight. Somebody asked me, "Do you love yourself?" And I didn't know that was even an option. It
Uh,
was nothing I ever thought of, nothing I ever did, and that's why I wanted to just mention when I hear that you knew that. Um,
Oh.
that was what I wanted.
I so so my ex-wife and I split, and then I'm left sitting in the house because the other thing is that I used to drink a lot. So recovering addict, like things like that. So one of the things that happened is that when you stop doing all the things that you say, like that lead you to addiction, so to speak, you realize how lonely it is because everybody you're around does it. And I'm not
Right.
talking about anything hard, but just drinking, for example. If you're around people that are always drinking, it's hard to find people that want to go hang out that don't want to drink. You know what I mean? So then you end up lonely. So then I was like, you know what? I got to figure this out. So what I started doing was I started trying to, I don't want to say walking the familiar path, but I wanted something that looked normal, that I remember, that didn't make me feel so out of place. So I worked in restaurants. So what I started doing was I started thinking to myself, you know, I work in not fine dining, but upper class. Um, I'm a foodie. So I
Mhm.
started taking myself out and it started off as a distraction so that I wasn't, you know, sitting in the house looking at a wall. You know what I mean? And then getting out there and then I would talk to people and shake hands even when I didn't want to. And then through that, I started learning how, because a lot of my life revolves around the Bible, especially now. So one of the things that it talks about in the Bible is finding a purpose, serving that, and that is where you find joy.
Mm.
We chase happiness all the time, and that's external. You know, we want to be happy, we want to be happy, but it usually takes an act of someone else to make us happy. Well, how do you find joy? You find a purpose and you serve it. So what I started doing was I started looking for ways to help people. You know, nonprofits, or I would talk to the homeless people because I work downtown. I would
Mhm.
talk to the homeless people and hang out with them. I started finding myself, and I started finding those little sparks in myself again. And I started
Mm.
thinking, you know, those things that I would normally do. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't me. And then I would try to find something else. And there was kind of a combination of that newness of the stuff that I was discovering about my new. Keep in mind, I got married at 24, 25. So, yeah, 24, 25. And then I'm looking at getting a divorce around 40. So in all that time, you better hope you grow. But who did
Right.
I grow into? So I became kind of obsessed in who am I now, and that's kind of how I found started falling in love with myself. Because I was like, you're a pretty funny guy. Yeah, you know. And then the other thing is simple things like, and I pointed this out to my kids, and I had done this, and I've done this exercise a few times, where if they're having a pissy day or something, and I'm like, oh, well, come with me. And then like one time in particular, we went to a store, and I was like, you know, when you smile and they smile back, things start to change in you. No, blah, 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 because, you know, they're stuck in their head, they're kids.
Sure.
No, no, no. And then I'm like, watch. We're walking down, and this actually happened. We're walking down, and then there's this lady. She just has just like a plain face on. I smile at her. She doesn't smile back at me, but the lady behind her does. And so then she smiles at me, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? She's like, I'm doing good, blah, blah, blah. And then we keep walking, and I said, see, that doesn't mean anything. Okay. And then I kept doing it. And then after a while, they start smiling, and I'm like, you see, you also, how you serve people. That has a big part to do with falling in love with yourself. I know it sounds strange, but it's a whole lot easier to do when you're finding joy. Because when you're stuck in that rut, it starts to narrow you down into this like a glutton, like not a glutton, like a gloomy pit almost.
Yeah.
And it's easier to slip further and further down. And people don't realize that, but it really is. It really is. And I also had good friends that were my supporting cast that kind of they gave me a hard time too. Don't get me wrong, all good friends too. But they gave me a hard time, but they corralled around me and they supported the things that I wanted to try and do, even if it sounded bizarre.
And I think that's part of it is finding the right people around ourselves. So even when we're learning to love ourselves, it's
Hmm.
our responsibility.
Yeah,
It's our responsibilities to own up to the things that we might have gone through, but also uh, that's really the power that goes behind everything else. And but when you have the right people to support you as well, it
hmm.
makes it easier to love yourself. And this is always from within, but if you have that support system, you have those people, and you sound like you have some amazing friends who actually
I
got
do.
you. Well, actually, got your wife also. So,
I did.
but
And
so
one of
what?
the things that I just want to touch on something real quick. One of the things that I really had to get over, and I don't mean to sound so nonchalant about it, but one of the things I really had to get over was the thought of how could God love someone like me so much?
Mm,
You know, because I felt like, and keep in mind, I felt like I was a total screw up. If I wasn't a total screw up, I mean, don't get me wrong, I tried to be the best dad, and anybody will tell you that. But I felt like everything else in my life was failing. And it was just kind of like one thing I was like, so if how can God love somebody like me? Well, when you read in the Bible and and you start taking in all the things that Jesus and the disciples, all the disciples were the people that nobody wanted around.
hmm
I mean, and not only that, here was another key was if you look at Lilith and you look at Peter, they changed into Mary Magdalene and Simon. The identities completely changed. All the past no longer mattered.
right.
And I think that was something that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, no,
So
that's interesting how you weave the Bible into it and your faith. So your faith obviously helped you get through some of
yes,
the challenges that you.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I do think we need to have a faith, and it doesn't have to be any specific faith as long as you follow through it, and it's about love, right?
I
So
love,
it's love notes. I mean, the Bible in some way could be love notes, and so let's go into
absolutely.
let's stop beating around the bush and let's find out about your book. So how did you and your wife put together this book, or even think about that? Hey, let's go sit down and write a book.
So people, well, it started off because we got together, we got married, and people would come up to us and be like, okay, so how is it really? Because how you see us on social media, how you see us when we're out and about, that is us. There is no change behind closed doors. There's none of that. That's really how we are. And at first it was kind of bizarre because we thought, well, what do they mean? I mean, are we doing something different? Are we doing what's going on?
Hmm.
And we realized that people were not finding in their relationships what they were seeing in ours.
Sure.
So we started imparting the wisdom that we had for each other. And I'll give you an example. So before we wrote the book, there was a woman that came up. She had just started seeing this guy, and she said, "So I just started seeing him, and when I say just started, like within the last few weeks, and I don't know where to go from here. And you guys, you seem to have it together. We'd only been together for a few years. It wasn't like we'd been together for 20 years." And Love turned around and said, "Well, the first date we had a list to cross each other off because we had non-negotiables that we were not going to mess around the second time and be okay with. We had non-negotiables and boundaries off the bat they were non-negotiables.
Sure.
So once we were able to agree on all that, then we took the next step. And I think what happens a lot is that people, when they get together, which is part of the reason why we started with this book, is when people get together, they just go on a whim. They don't even know each other's beliefs. They don't even know each other's history. They don't know any of this stuff. And they're just like, oh, but then 6 months later they figure, oh, I'm so deep in it. I'm here already. I'm all these things. So we kind of wrote the book because, especially in the beginning, there were a lot of mishaps. You
Mm.
can imagine we're blending families. In the beginning, the kids didn't really like each other.
Yep, it's hard, man. Blending families
Uh,
is not for the faint-hearted, man. I got to tell you.
no, it's not. So we had a lot of mishaps, and we had a lot of we call disappointing conversations.
Sure.
Um, and all the examples in the book are actual things that happened. And one of the things that we had to kind of juggle around was she is a paint the picture with 1,000 words. And she paints beautiful. I mean, she can get in your head and you can see the trees and the waterfalls, and it's all amazing. I just want bullet points. I don't care what color the tree is. I don't, none of that. So people that knew us could not understand how we were gelling so well together. And it's because of the communication, and it's because her grace and my understanding, and basically wanting each other. It's like when she comes to me with a problem, I look at it as an opportunity to learn. Kind of like when you're playing video games.
Hmm.
When you get to the boss, you don't go, I quit. This is going to suck.
Yep.
No, because if you beat the boss, you might get new moves. You might get this new thing. What's next? You know? And again, serving her, well, you want the best for her. So in order to give her the best, you got to create a space that she feels free enough, myself included with her, that we can come with any problems we have and say, hey, this is I'm good with this or I'm not good with this, and this is where we're going to go with it. So it definitely helps. But we not look forward to, because nobody wants to have, hey, we need to talk, and they're like, oh man,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
right. I mean, that's the part, in many relationships, and I've been in there, and I've not done as well as I would have liked.
But
In that communication, if you don't communicate, no matter what you do, that becomes the biggest, holdup. And
mm-hmm,
when we have those holdups, and it sounds like, while whatever challenges you have, you go back to, I guess, your love notes, right? You the way you communicate and you learn. There's a lot of times in my life I didn't know how to communicate properly. I knew what I wanted and I knew what I was feeling, but I didn't communicate it properly, or I had been in relationships that I wasn't able to communicate, or they weren't able to
right,
communicate to me. I'm not trying to push it all on somebody.
right,
It's the power, and it's a little trial and error. Wouldn't you agree? When you
yeah,
even writing the book has to be a little trial and error, because
it
if
was,
your wife is if Danny is so detailed and you're not, you're just like, all right, go for it, and
yeah,
so there has to be that blend to make sure you both feel as 50-50 partners versus
mm-hmm,
just people who are together.
right. And one of the things that I do think helps us out a lot is the effort is there. That's number one. As a matter of fact, if you look at the book, I don't know if you
Yep.
can see it, but
Yep.
like this right here, those are
Yep.
actual love notes that I left her.
Oh,
They
okay.
got copied and put onto the cover of the book.
Nice.
But I would leave them for her on her bed, and then she would come home and she would see them, things like that. So number one is the effort. Number two is the space to understand that my 100% yesterday might not be my 100% today.
Mm, that's powerful. Yeah, because
You
right,
have to.
we're in different phases, the day, depending on what's going on and what
Yep.
you're experiencing. Or you just don't feel well, right? You didn't sleep well. There's a
Yeah.
million reasons why, but that's really powerful.
Yeah. We have the freedom. She'll come up to me and go, I love you. Today's not the day though.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right. And then I just chill by myself. I'm like, okay, I'm cool. I'm not taking it personal. You know, it's just, I can't express it enough. We really give each other the freedom and the space to just be however we are. Um, and with the goal of trying to change to be a better person, yes. But if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, not today, I don't want to do it, I won't hear a word from her.
Yep.
And then whenever I'm ready to go and hang out with her or lay down on the bed with her or do whatever, she welcomes me. It's not oh, you ignored me all day today. It's, who wants to come back to that? I wouldn't,
Right.
so, but I would say the biggest thing is she has taught me what grace is. And I am still blown away.
Yeah,
Like,
how powerful being able to receive grace, right? A lot of people offer grace, or at least what they believe is grace, but how
mhm.
powerful it is to receive grace? When you didn't live up to the boundaries, the bar that we set for ourselves.
That's a big one right there. The bars that we set for ourselves, brother. And a lot of these bars that we set for ourselves is nonsense. Because at the end of the day, I had a heart attack and some strokes about 6 months ago. Do you think what was important to me while I was feeling like I was dying was going to be the same thing that was important to me 3 hours earlier?
Yep, no, 100% not. Right.
So, and grace, in a way, puts that into perspective of who this person is coming to me. Because here's the other thing: people think that love is all, hey, da, da, da. You can't have love without correction.
Correct.
So you have to be willing to put your ego aside, grow, and trust that the other person has the best intentions for you.
Correct.
And if you do that, it's going to go a long way. Now, her and I don't agree about everything, so don't. It's
Right,
not like,
right.
you
And
know,
you shouldn't, right? Because nobody should be going through a world thinking, Henry's always right, Dave is always right, or anybody else.
right.
We need some pushback. We need some, hey, were you aware? I mean, one of my biggest problems prior to all my challenges, to a lot of my challenges, was self-awareness. I didn't know what I didn't know. I know that sounds stupid as an adult, as a 50-year-old man, and all that stuff, but nobody ever, or I didn't allow the space to happen. And there's
Hmm.
there's power behind learning that, in knowing,
Hmm.
really where we go, where we move through opportunities.
Yep, you're right. And the fact that you have the freedom to say that is amazing, because that is an absolute truth, brother. It really is.
Yep.
It really is.
Well, it's one of the many things I learned, going through my darkest periods to where I'm at now. While I'm the same physical person, I am not the same person in so many different ways because of what I've experienced and how it forged me to be what I needed to be. I'm
Amen.
fairly close to being the man that I always thought I was. You know.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's never too late.
Yep. So, what are some of the other things that you learned from being, an author, with this book, these love notes, and laughter?
So I learned that the main thing that I learned is, so when, okay, and I know that people have different thoughts and ideas as to toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, toxic
Yep.
all these things, right? And I'm not messing with any of that. What I did learn though was someone has to make the decision.
Right.
And I don't mean in a I am above you, or I dominate, or you answer them,
Yeah.
like not like that at all.
Right. No. Like, what do you want to
Someone,
do for dinner? You
yeah.
can't go. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Somebody has to eventually say, "Hey, we're going to wherever that place is," or
Hmm.
right.
So what her and I have done is, I know that there are 10 things on the table, and I am amazing at five. She's amazing at the other five, right? So if there's an issue that comes to hand where it is not one of my amazing five, but it's one of hers, I will defer to her.
Hmm.
I'll say, hey, now I ultimately, if we clash over something and we don't really, no, there's no yelling and stuff like that. But if we don't agree on something, I end up making the decision. With that comes, though, the responsibility of that decision.
That's powerful. Yep.
So it's not taken lightly. It is, and there are times when I'm wrong, and I would like to also point out, whenever I'm wrong in the decision that I make, or she's wrong in the decision that she makes, we don't jab each other with it. We say, okay, what didn't work, and then we move on.
Hmm.
We
Right. You take it
don't,
as a learning. You're taking it as a
yeah.
learning lesson versus, oh, now, which is also a different way of looking at things. Because I heard you also say, which is very important, is I take the responsibility. When I make a decision, I don't just take it lightly. I don't just go, okay, we'll just go wherever. You you
Hmm.
you actually have given some thought about it. You've given a whole bunch of, you know, and of course you want it to work out well, right? Who who
Right.
who makes decisions that we don't want to work out well?
Hmm. And you have the freedom. You also have somebody that has your back. Same thing
Yep.
with her. If I defer to something to her, and she says that we need to go right, and I think we need to go left, but she knows more than I do about that one thing,
Hmm.
and we go right, and we should have gone left. I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, I told you we should have gone left."
Right.
No, I'm like, "Okay, what do we need to do? Where did it go wrong?" Like, you know what I mean? We really try to keep the other person in mind and building each other up. You know what I mean? We're not. This is how I think of it. I do not talk to my wife how I would not want somebody else to talk to my wife.
Right.
And if I'm not gonna yell at her just like I wouldn't want some guy at the store yelling at my wife, why am I gonna do it to her?
Right.
That just makes no sense. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's what.
and it's hard, and besides, I did hear you when you grew up, you had some anger, right? You were an angry person. Me as well. I mean, that's led me down a lot of paths that I never wanted to be at.
Right.
How did you overcome some of that? How did you see yourself differently or allow yourself to be seen differently to do that?
Well, the main thing was that when I was an angry person, was a lot of the problems that I had were because I'm the one that created them.
Mm,
Like I'm sitting here being angry, and I say something stupid to somebody because I'm angry, and then they turn around and they say something back to me, and I'm like, oh, this guy's trying to mess with me. And I actually just shut my mouth to begin with,
mm,
and a lot of those problems are they're the problems that I caused. So then I started getting to a point where it was just kind of like, and I didn't know how to explain it, and somebody explained it really well later on down the road, and they said, I have a cup that goes up to here. Whatever I have to give to other people is what spills over. If
mm.
it doesn't spill over, I don't have anything to give to anybody.
Nice.
So, and the thing that I always thought, because I always tried to, again, always tried to do for everybody else and stuff like that, but it wasn't really coming back. And then you start going, wait a minute, I'm giving all this stuff out. And it's either I'm angry because of, somebody did something that they shouldn't have done, or I was expecting someone to do something in return that they never did. It starts getting me on this, like in a funk, and that
Yep.
funk turns into something else. And, but it was all me.
Right. It's all our reaction. We could control so much of everything else, right? It all that was one of the things that I learned and I teach people with. It all starts with you. It's not, look, Henry did this or Dave did this. Yes, they might have done that, but
Yep.
our reaction doesn't have to be what it is, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
we put a little love into it, and especially with a partner that we care for, we want to make sure that they see that, and we have to give them the grace. When we talked about that earlier, is like, did Henry really want to hurt my feelings? Did Dave really want to hurt my feelings? If the answer is yes, then that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But when the answer is no, then that's again a different conversation.
And it also helps. One of the other things that I learned was I just meet people where they're at.
That's powerful.
And because it's not anything, because they might go on their life and never see me again.
Mm,
Or we might end up running together in a year from now. You don't know, you'd be surprised how many people I only met briefly who have turned around and years later become a much bigger part of my life, whether through
mm.
work, through faith, through something else, you know? But I just met them where they're at, and I can almost guarantee you most of those people were not in the same place when I met them again.
Sure, right. We all should be growing, and hopefully you've given them something to think about, or at least they
Yeah,
grew on their own, and that's where it comes into.
yeah, because what and you asked earlier about some of the things that I had to realize. Another thing that I realized was, we're all God's children, which
Yep.
also means that we're always growing up until the day we die. So the things that we saw of our parents that we were like, I can't believe they were growing up too. They made a lot of horrible decisions, maybe whatever. They were growing up too, but it also gives you the grace that there are a lot of times when I look back and I say, I wish I'd done things differently with my kids. Um, but now I know, and now I'm not going to do that again. It's kind of like you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know,
Right.
you know? And I allowed myself to understand that I was growing up. I still am growing up.
100%.
I'm 47, but I'm still growing up.
We're still growing through all the things that we experienced. Um,
Amen.
so as we're gonna round up, end the episode, but I always have people walk into my magic garden, to give one
Okay.
piece of advice, right? It's a piece of advice either from your book, from that you just want to share with everybody, and I'd love to hear what you think. What's your seed of that we're gonna plant today?
The seed that we're going to plant today is, oh, that's a great question, man. That is just not true. And I was prepared for it until I wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. There's
um,
so many. There's so many. I mean, that's the thing. And you've given a lot of seeds during this episode. So this has not been an episode where you're just like, oh, okay, who cares? You've given lots of real good information here, and you know. just trying to give you a little more time to think about your seed.
Right.
But but no, really, no, there has been so much really good information on how you overcame some things, but also where you're at now, and really what I love when we talk about the word love, we use that word way too easily in society, but you're showing us, and those love notes teach us really what it's about. Not, it's that unconditional love. It's that thoughtful, when, what do you want to eat? Where do you want to eat? But it's that thoughtful decision making, and somebody has the responsibility. Somebody needs to have that responsibility, and you've taken that on for yourself, but also that's, where it goes.
Yeah, 100%. I think that if I were to leave one piece, just one piece,
Mhm.
is that to really understand what kindness is.
Mm,
People talk about being nice. I don't want nice. I really don't. I want kindness.
sure.
A true desire to help the other people be the best version of themselves.
Nice.
And I could not imagine doing that with another person as much as I do with my wife, with love. Um, and I think that that is the one thing because there are times when she's like, "Oh no, 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 this right here is not happening." But she's not coming at me.
Right.
No, she's in a way kind of battling the sucky part of me with me. I know
Yep.
it sounds weird,
No,
but
right. We're not perfect, right?
no,
I'll tell you a secret. I'm not perfect, right?
I am shocked.
Yeah, I know. So everybody who knows me well would be shocked. I hope they're all sitting down. But no, but it's there's that piece of love that your flaws, right? I know who I am. I know the really good parts of me, and I know the parts that I'm still working on.
Right.
And doing my best. And either you put up with me or you don't, and that's a choice. And I understand that, and I try to respect it. There's times it's hard. Life is
Yeah.
hard.
Oh, I know, and it is. I mean, you got 8 billion people on the planet,
Yeah,
and everybody's just trying to find their way, just in whatever time period they're in. Um, and I think if you can find somebody, set the standards to begin with, and then move from that, and
hmm
then just kind of in a way that you're trying to build up. Because the other thing is it's easy to love someone, but it's harder to love someone that you want to build a life with.
yeah. Well, I say don't use the word love unless it's unconditional. So if
Yeah,
so if you have somebody who has you see a challenge in Dave, either love Dave wholly and talk to him. And again, when we started off this conversation, communication. This is stuff that he might not realize, not because he doesn't want to behave in a certain way. He doesn't see it. And while it might be easy, like breathing for you, it's not always easy for everybody else.
exactly, exactly. I'm just really, really appreciative and really thankful. And in Love and I and the way we've handled our relationship, it has allowed our kids to see what this non-crazy fighting, all the stuff going on in the
Yep,
household, what the other side of that is.
100%.
Um, and it gives people hope that they can have a love too. And we get people that we've talked to that now years later, they're like, "Oh, meet my husband," and we're like, "What? Wow," and just kind of falling through the cracks a little bit,
hmm
pick back up. It's like a friend of mine. So I want to tell you something real brief,
Yep.
okay? So I'm a realtor, and about 3 years ago, I had a deal that was going down. It was about a $1.5 million deal. And it was supposed to be a 30-day thing. It turned into 4 months. At that time, I had some other things that fell through the cracks as well. And I was just beside myself. And so I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, listen, and I was telling him all the stuff that happened and he's sitting there and he's listening. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was like, yeah, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going down this whole venting thing, right? And he's like, okay, yeah. And then I stopped and he goes, so you done? And I said, yeah, yeah, I'm done. He goes, how arrogant must you be? I said, the hell are you talking about, Bo? Me? What? I'm telling you what my friend goes, no, no, no. you pray for strength, but then want to complain about the workout. Tell me how that
Mm,
works.
right.
I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. I just want to say, but when I came back around, I was like, brother, you're 100% right. 100% right. And it's just those little things that I always try to, it's like when you feel like you're in the crap, that's where the best stuff grows.
Yep.
Like those kind of little things, just, yeah, yeah, all right. Because it gets hard, brother. It gets hard. I'm telling you, it does.
100%. It does get hard. Well, I thank you so much because it definitely was easy talking to you, brother. I'm really happy about it. And where could they find the book?
You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, hardback. And then, and this is the book right here, More Than Love, Notes, and Laughter.
Hmm.
We do have a second one coming up. I don't know if it's coming
Oh,
in, but
nice. Yeah,
okay.
I see it, and
Yeah.
I'll make sure it's
Yeah.
we have the link in the show notes.
Yeah. So you can find it on there. We are in the middle of writing a second book because we've gotten so much positive feedback. And we might also be doing some speaking engagements coming up as well. We just haven't found the right fits. Um, so we really want to be surrounded by people truly trying to help and develop other people, not just trying to chase a bag, not just trying to do this.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do. So, yep, Amazon, check it out. More Than Love, Notes, and Laughter. Hen and Danny's Guide to Building a Relationship Beyond the Ordinary. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you, sir. I am tell Danny I said hi, and
I will.
I really do appreciate everything that you brought us today. It was truly amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on, brother. I really appreciate it and looking forward to see what we can do in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. This is the first of many.
Yeah.
And for everybody else, as always, we're gonna bring peace and love in your life as your foundation. I hope that's a strong foundation. It's great to build on. And when you bring a bat, bring awesome thoughts, exactly like Henry brought today for us. And then, knock it out of the park. Hit your sweet spot.
Uh,
Thanks a lot.
Amen. Thank you.